Antonio. We've already addressed the fact that you're not a father yet, but I'm assuming at some point that's in the works, and so at some point you will get to experience the very special privilege of disciplining your child. And you got a dog. You have a dog?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you discipline your dog when he pees in the house or does something like that. There's some consequences for that, right? Has your dog ever burned your house down because you disciplined him? Just curious. You know why? One, he doesn't have opposable thumbs, and a lighter would be awfully hard to operate. But two, because that's a ridiculous thing to do. In 29 Palms, a 17-year-old who was not identified due to being a minor burned down his mom's house because she took away his computer. Connor, you like computers, right? You got a big computer at your house and you spend a lot of time on it. Have your parents ever taken it away from you? Probably not, because you're perfect. But if they did, would you commit arson and burn your house to the ground?
No.
Would it even cross your mind? Would you think maybe, you know what, I should light this place up? Mom and Dad are mean.
Probably not, especially given that that's probably where the computer is.
No, yeah, well, it is, for sure. Then he said he would shoot her after the house burned to the ground. This is what happens when you don't whoop your kids. This is what happens when you don't take that hand and you put it squarely on their bum. This is what happens when, like yesterday, when my son punched me in the stomach. And it was it was all in good fun. He thought, what did I do? I hit him back. Why? He needed to understand you can't do that. People will say, well, that's cruel. That's cruelty. You hit your kids. Yeah, but here's the difference. My kid doesn't walk into Walmart, and if I tell him no, throws a freaking tantrum. You know why? Because he's going to get that little tushy tore up. That's why. When I grew up, I was 19 years old. I was as big, strong as an ox, athletic as all get out. I was playing college baseball. I was a man, by God. My 90-year-old great-grandmother heard me back-talk my mother. Now, mind you, I'm a grown man. She said, Zachary, get my shoe. And I said, I'm sorry, what? Big Mama? That's what we called her, Big Mama. She said, get over and get my shoe and bring it over here. Yes, ma'am. I went and got her house shoe, and I carried it over. And she said, now bend over. I'm going to whoop your butt. I said, what'd I do, Big Mama? She said, you back-talked your mama. I said, yes, ma'am. And I bent over, and look, it didn't hurt at all. She was a 90-year-old frail woman. But the reality is, I was raised with a sense of discipline and respect. If my mom or dad said, don't do this, I knew for a fact if I did it, there was going to be heck to pay for it. What we have here is a failure to discipline our children. And it's not just this kid. Now, this may be a very extreme example. This may be as bad as it gets. But what we have here is a failure to look, young parents, if you're out there listening, which you're probably up because you haven't slept much because you have young kids and you don't sleep when you have young kids. Whoop the snot out of your kids. I told my wife when we had Zayden I was going to whoop him once a day for his sanity, his health, and for mine. And there's not much over-exaggeration in that. Because the reality is, these kids are grown up today to be so freaking spoiled and what's the word? They're entitled, and they're all these things. We got a bunch of kids that they've never been told no in their life. And I'm going to bet the games that we were playing on that computer were probably pretty violent. I don't think he was playing World of Warcraft, okay? I'll put it that way. And man, I just don't understand. Look, give us a call, 1-866-494-WVNN. I want to talk about spanking your kids. Let's talk about spanking your kids. Let's talk about physical discipline for your children as a response to misbehavior, disobedience, lack of discipline, whatever. I whooped snot out of mine. I'll tell you all about it. I'll tell you, I mean, literally, my son is the best behaved 4-year-old I know. Now, oftentimes, my wife and I look at each other and like, oh my gosh, our son's a little holy terror. And then we carry him out around anybody else. Literally, you put him in a room with any other kid in the world, and we look at each other and we're like, we did okay. We're doing okay. There's a long way to go. He's 4, so long way to go. But I want to hear from somebody. Let's talk about it. Who didn't spank their kids? Who did spank? Connor, were you spanked as a child?
Not really.
Did you ever do anything? Connor, I feel like you were probably you're probably hard to spank. I don't think you did much. You probably didn't do anything wrong, did you?
No, I was perfect in every way.
That's kind of what I figured. What about you, Antonio? Did you got that tushy tore up?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And you know what that created in your life? Discipline. You know what? If your parents said, "Hey, Antonio," all right. So did they pay for college
No.
Okay, so you pay for your own school. So my parents had an agreement with me that as long as I had a scholarship and could do, there were certain benchmarks I had to meet, and then I got my college paid for. But guess what happened when I didn't meet those benchmarks? My dad called me one day, I'll never forget. Ring, ring, ring. Hello? Hey, Dad. What are you doing? Oh, nothing. What are you doing, son? The night before, I had made a very bad decision with my debit card. And so there was a trail that was evidence of the crime that I'd committed. He said, son, what'd you do last night? I'm like, nothing, Dad. Nothing at all. He said, oh, yeah, well, your debit card says different. So I love you very much. And I wish you the best. But you can pick up your phone bill. You can pick up your insurance tab. You can start paying for your college. Your cell phone bill costs $75 a month. You're this, cost that. You're this, cost that. He said, I'm here for you. I love you. If you need anything, you know I'm always your dad. But you have made a bad decision. You have broken our rules, and these are the consequences. And that lesson was probably the most transformative lesson I've ever learned in my entire life, because literally I went from being on mommy and daddy's dime to growing up in a matter of seconds because I made a bad decision. We got Tim on line 3. Tim from Athens. Tim, bring it in here, big guy. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm in my 60s, and I remember getting some whipping sticks from the whipping tree.
Oh, yeah.
Mom took care of the problem that way. I recall that Mom was able to drop 4 kids off in the Sears suit section, and we were told to sit there, and that's what we did.
Yeah, the whooping tree was always a rough go for me because you know, hey, go get a switch out of the tree, and it's like, I'd rather get a sponge. How about a sponge? What am I gonna pick here? If I pick a big one, it's gonna break my leg. If I pick a small one, it's gonna absolutely wear me out.
You get whooped harder for picking a small one.
You picked the wrong one. She goes and gets one. You're like, oh. So it's like this
If you think about it, that was a very savage way of parenting back then, because my parents did the same thing. Going to pick the weapon you were going to get with. I mean, that's...
At one point, my mom made me take my belt off. I'm like, what? Like, use your own belt, woman. No, I'm kidding. There was another time that I'll never forget. And to this day, when I see Orange Dial, like the original Orange Dial soap in a squirt bottle, I throw up violently, because I decided to backtalk my mother and say something that I was pretty. I mean, like, I didn't curse my mom. But I backtalked her pretty. Look, if you can't tell, I've got a pretty sharp sword, if you will, with the old tongue here. Like, I can respond very passive aggressively in a way that cuts to the core. My mom said, "Come here, son." I'm like, okay, what? This is weird. Like, she hasn't given me a bath in 20 years. Like, what are we doing here? She grabbed my toothbrush. She squirted 2 big squirts of Dial soap and said, lean over. And she commenced to brushing my teeth with Orange Dial soap. She washed my mouth out with soap. And people are like, that's not a true story. I promise you, I bet I'd bet my life on it. This is as true of a story as I could ever tell you. And guess what I didn't do anymore? Backtalk my mom. Because I really didn't want my mouth washed out with soap. And the reality is, you know, this whole culture of it's abused. It's unhealthy. The only thing unhealthy about it is the fact that you're setting your kids up for absolute failure as they move forward. Because in life, there are consequences for actions. This young man is going to be charged with a felony. He's going to go to jail for arson, or at least have arson on his record, because his mom never disciplined him. And unfortunately, we've got an entire society of young entitled children or older children, kids, whatever, that have never experienced this, that have no idea what it means to have any discipline whatsoever. And it's a freaking shame. We've got one more call before we go to break. We got Kenneth from Tony on line 4. Kenneth, bring it in here. Tell me about your whooping tree.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I've been listening for a few minutes, and I agree with you 1,000% to a certain degree. But I wanted to point one thing out that you folks haven't addressed. Well, if you did, I didn't catch it. Is that some of us were beat really bad.
Sure.
And when I was young, I'm 71 and 2 months. I was beat horribly for 3 years by my uncle, And I swore, of course, I grew up with my mother also, and I didn't get that beaten that bad. But it was always physical. He hit everything, coat hangers, hairbrushes, you name it, sticks. But my uncle was a sadist. And there are those of us that swore that we would never hit our children when we grew up. My discipline was put them in the corner, and I may have overdone that.
No, I completely
to point that out.
Yeah, absolutely, Kenneth. And there is a fine line between discipline and anger. My mom's thing was never do anything in anger, and that's the way we try to raise our child, because anger provokes a more violent approach. So you're listening to Hometown Heartbeat on WVNN. We'll be right back.